Today I'm giving you my top 10 worst 49ers playoff losses. I understand the 49ers were the first team to win 5 Super Bowls. They'll have more success than many NFL franchises ever will have. I do know that, I understand it. But I became a fan. I started following the 49ers. I was just old enough to understand something about football immediately after they won that 1994 Super Bowl. So I missed it. And over the last 30 years, from the mid-90s to the present, I will argue that the 49ers have had more painful, devastating, heartbreaking losses in the playoffs than any team over that 30-year stretch. The 49ers this season had an injury-filled season, and they still managed to make it to the divisional round of the playoffs. They had a shocking playoff victory on the road against the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles. The 49ers made it to the divisional round to face the Seattle Seahawks, their rivals now in the NFC West. And the 49ers lost 41-6 to their rival. Yet, this game doesn't even come close to cracking the top 10, my personal top 10, or even when you consider going beyond those 30 years. Because with all the injuries, the expectation was not Super Bowl or bust. Right? It was a long shot that the 49ers would get through Seattle, and then probably the Rams, and then defeat whoever came out of the AFC. Some people are dreamers. Often I'm a dreamer. But even I didn't believe that was going to happen. Now, there are a number of games, tough losses, bad losses, going back to the 70s that would be honorable mentions. The 49ers lost 3 straight years to the Dallas Cowboys. 3 straight years. Didn't make the list. 49ers lost a 49-3 game to the New York Giants, which I consider the most embarrassing one-sided loss in 49ers playoff history. But that didn't even make the list either. They lost the 1993 NFC Championship game to the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. Didn't make the list. So where shall we begin? Number 10, the 1997 NFC Championship game. And when I say 1997, I'm talking about the season. I understand if you're looking at the actual date, it was in 1998. But whenever we talk about history, we're talking about the season. So it's the 1997 NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers. Why is this such a bad game? Well, the 49ers lost to the Packers in 1985, which was a shocking upset. That was really the first playoff game I sat down and watched. And I remember how surprising, how disappointing it was. The 49ers lost at home in the divisional round to the Packers. It was a huge upset. Packers came in and defeated the 49ers, who were coming off a Super Bowl victory. They were the defending champions. And then in 1996, the 49ers would lose again in the playoffs to the Packers in Green Bay. Well, 1997 was a third matchup. Third year in a row. 49ers are back at home. They're the number 1 seed in the NFC, and the stakes are higher, being the conference title game. And this was a 49ers team that had Steve Young, a young Terrell Owens, who really came onto the scene and had a breakout year in 97. Jerry Rice was down with the injury that season. Well, on defense, they had future Hall of Famers Bryant Young, Chris Dolman, Kevin Green, and Rod Woodson. Couldn't beat the Packers. Packers came in and defeated the 49ers and would advance to their second Super Bowl in a row. They would go on to lose to the Denver Broncos. But this was the furthest the 49ers got, the closest they got to winning a Super Bowl or just reaching a Super Bowl with Steve Young and that core group. They would never get to a championship game even again. It was a wet game. It was an ugly game. The 49ers really couldn't get any kind of rhythm going on offense. And Brett Favre just did what he did against the 49ers. Brett Favre killed the 49ers. And this was another example. 3 consecutive playoff losses against the Packers. And when I grew up, because of the time I grew up, the Packers were the team we hated the most. And when I look at my time as a 49ers fan, I always say the number one rival for the 49ers, it's the Packers. It's not the Cowboys, not the Giants. I understand if you're a little older than me, of course you would say either the Cowboys or the Giants. But when I came in and began watching, Packers. Couldn't stand the Packers. Couldn't stand Brett Favre. Well, this was a big reason why. Yeah, number 1 seed. You had still a very loaded team. You had the home field advantage. And you still lost the Packers anyway. Couldn't really get anything going. And another reason the Packers were such a bad thing and such a problem for the 49ers was George Seifert. His career with the 49ers really ended because of the Packers. Couldn't beat the Packers. And you bring in a new head coach, Steve Mariucci, and he couldn't beat the Packers either. The Packers were the thorn in the 49ers' side in the mid-90s. And even in 2001, when the 49ers got back with Jeff Garcia, who'd they run into the wild card round? The Packers in Green Bay, and they lost. Enough of the Packers. Number 9. And I would completely understand why people would think this one would be higher on the list. But it's because of all these other games that have topped it recently. But I'd say the 1992 conference championship game, San Francisco against the Cowboys. Cowboys 49ers. This is where the rivalry was renewed. This is where it started up again and picked up from really the catch game in 81. The 49ers that season were the number 1 seed. They had home field advantage. They had the MVP in Steve Young. They were looking to get back to the Super Bowl again and start potentially a dynasty. That's what the 49ers had in mind. Instead, Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and the Cowboys came into San Francisco on a wet field. It wasn't a rain game, but it was a wet turf. Defeated the 49ers, upset the 49ers, and they started their own dynasty instead. The 49ers never got another dynasty. Never have since. They only got to 1 Super Bowl with Steve Young. Instead, the Cowboys went in to San Francisco, upset them. Big game from Alvin Harper, Emmitt Smith running the football. There were legends everywhere on the field and on the sidelines because Steve Young was starting. Joe Montana was on the sideline. He was suited up there. And Troy Aikman, of course, on the other side. And Roger Staubach was roaming around on the Cowboys sideline. Jimmy Johnson, Hall of Fame head coach. George Seifert should be Hall of Fame head coach. Jerry Rice, Michael Irvin. And the Cowboys came in, and it wasn't just a problem that season because the 49ers would lose to the Cowboys the following year also. And it would take 2 seasons for the 49ers to overcome. The 49ers would not overcome the Cowboys until 1994. And that's one of the only reasons why this is not even higher on the list, is because the 49ers would get their revenge on the Cowboys in 1994. They would return to the Super Bowl. They would win a Super Bowl. You look at the other teams on this list, whether it be, say, the Harbaugh teams or the Shanahan teams, they never made it to the mountaintop. This group, at least this core with Seifert as the head coach and Steve Young and Jerry Rice, they would get to the top. But the Cowboys knocked them off twice, and this was the worst. At home, number 1 seed, MVP, and instead of starting your own dynasty, the Cowboys had different plans. And this was the how about them Cowboys game. Jimmy Johnson. And the Cowboys were the team in the 90s, not the 49ers. Number 8, the 2022 NFC Championship game against the Eagles in Philadelphia. This was a huge game between two stacked, loaded, juggernaut teams. And this was a showdown in Philadelphia. The Eagles would score first, but it was a controversial beginning because on that opening drive, on a 4th down, Devontae Smith appears to make a miraculous one-handed catch, which after seeing the replay was not a catch. But the Eagles rushed to the line, they got the play off, and Shanahan didn't challenge it. But it was not a catch, and that play changed the outcome of the game. Imagine if the 49ers stopped them and it was a 0-0 game. The Eagles went up 7-0, and then on that first possession for the 49ers, at the 7-minute mark, if I'm not mistaken, it was the 3rd offensive play, Hassan Reddick hit Brock Purdy on his right arm. It caused a complete tear of his UCL in his right throwing elbow. And then you're down to Josh Johnson as your quarterback, who was actually the 49ers' 4th string quarterback because that season, Trey Lance began the season. Then it was Jimmy Garoppolo. Then Brock Purdy. They were on their 4th quarterback, and Josh Johnson was not ready, and he was not ready for that stage. They tried, and believe it or not, the 49ers kept it close. But the game was over when Purdy got injured. It was over. The team played hard. They tried hard. They didn't give up. And they kept it very close up to almost halftime. It was 14-7 until Josh Johnson fumbled the ball. Then the Eagles go 21-7 at halftime. 3rd quarter, Josh Johnson gets knocked out with a concussion, which left Brock Purdy as the lone quarterback for the 49ers. And, at that point, he makes 2 pass attempts, but he can't throw. He has a tear in his elbow. He can't throw the football. And the game unraveled from there. It was just a slow death. It's as if you never really got to see the game play out between two great opponents here, and as a fan, you felt cheated. And the worst part about it was this was a great 49ers team. This was a team that was balanced. They were very strong on both sides of the ball. In fact, we never saw them lose a game with Brock Purdy at quarterback. He was 5-0 as a starter to finish the season, 2-0 in the playoffs. That 49ers team did not lose until Brock Purdy was injured. And to this day, I am convinced the 49ers were the better team. To this day, I'm convinced they were a better team than the Philadelphia Eagles, who were a very good, strong team, who made it to the Super Bowl, who almost won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Probably should have won against the Chiefs. Yet, I will always say the 49ers were the best team coming out of the NFC. The 49ers blew the Eagles out. I mean, the 49ers won a one-sided, convincing victory in the rematch the following season in Philadelphia. Probably Deebo Samuel's greatest game as a 49er. And then this playoffs, 2025 playoffs, the 49ers went into Philadelphia, upset the Eagles. It didn't make up for it in any way, but it was still sweet to beat the Eagles. The great question would be, though, would the 49ers have beaten the Chiefs in that Super Bowl? Probably not, right? They lost 2 other times. Why would you think they would have won that time? But they would have had another crack at it. And maybe 1 out of 3 times they could have possibly beaten the Chiefs. And it again was, other than the Purdy injury, this was a healthy team. And it was one of the most talented 49er teams we've seen. It was a great roster. But this was one of the most painful playoff losses. Because you're always left wondering, what if Brock Purdy didn't get injured? And Kyle Shanahan has to be blamed for what? Not protecting his quarterbacks. Because 2 of his quarterbacks got injured in that game. And for that season, you could say he lost 4 quarterbacks. Lance, Garoppolo, Purdy, and Johnson. Is it not true that the playoff losses stay with you more than the wins? It is sad, but true. Number 7, the 2011 conference title game. New York Giants at San Francisco 49ers. Another entry in this playoff rivalry. Every time I go back and revisit this title game, it gets a little worse. Because it was not the Giants winning this football game. It was the 49ers losing it, handing the game to the Giants. I consider the 49ers at this time, because it had been some years, nearly 10 years since they had made a playoff appearance ahead of schedule. But as a younger fan, I didn't realize how quickly teams' playoff and even especially Super Bowl windows would open and close. You can't waste any opportunities. The New York Giants were an unexpected team themselves. They entered the playoffs with a 9-7 record. They managed to go into Lambeau Field in the divisional round and upset the Green Bay Packers. And it was not a small upset. It was a huge playoff upset. It was a 15-1 Packers team, a team that was the defending Super Bowl champions. They go into Green Bay, defeat the Packers, and the 49ers came off an emotional, one of the greatest divisional playoff game victories you could have. The victory against the Saints, an all-time 49ers great playoff victory. And the 49ers got off to a fast start on offense. Alex Smith connecting on a long touchdown to Vernon Davis. And you're thinking to yourself, could we actually make it to the Super Bowl? Could we make it back? Well, the offense really sputtered and bogged down. It was a lot of checkdowns from Alex Smith. It was receivers that couldn't separate. Not much from the offense. And it was a game that was defined by missed opportunities, miscues, mistakes, turnovers. It was a wet game. Wet beginning to this game in San Francisco. And it was a night that I wish we could say we could forget. But it's a night we'll always remember as 49er fans. Missed opportunities. Let's start there. As it is a hard watch going back and looking at only the highlights. Forget about the whole game. The highlights. And especially the lowlights for the 49ers. 2 different points. You had 49ers defensive backs colliding into each other, missing would-be interceptions. I mean, Eli Manning had far from a great game. He did not have a particularly good game. I'll compliment Eli with this. He is tough. He will stay in there and take hits. And when he commits to a throw, he commits to a throw. But Eli's also one of the, if you want to call it luck, luckiest quarterbacks in NFL history. With some of the decisions he made and some of the breaks he received in huge games. But in the first half, Goldson and Brown colliding on what should have been an interception. And then in overtime, Rodgers and Goldson colliding on what should have been another interception. There was another point in this one that was extremely frustrating. It was not all about the officials. I will say the 49ers deserved to lose this game. But what can you say about Navarro Bowman before the 2-minute warning? This was way back in Giants territory, before the 2-minute warning. Clearly stripping the ball, forcing a fumble from Ahmad Bradshaw. And then what do the officials say? Oh, the whistle was blown. The play was dead. And all of us are sitting there saying, what? And you go back and look at the replays and listen. And you're not hearing any whistle. I'm not hearing any whistle to this day until the ball is already out. As others have said, was that the fastest whistle in NFL history? That would have set the 49ers up right there to win and end it and go to the Super Bowl. Okay, we'll put that aside. I'm not going to blame it on the officials, but that was a terrible call. Kyle Williams, as he made 3 mistakes in this. He had a fumble in the first half that was actually recovered by the 49ers. Then he had the punt returns. The punt that hit him on the knee that was recovered by the Giants. And then the overtime fumble that ended the game. I mean, that sealed it. There was nothing the 49ers could do unless they hoped to get a fumble recovery themselves by the New York Giants. And fumbles would be a big part of this series of playoffs between the 49ers and Giants in Candlestick Park. This was not the first time there was a game-changing, season-altering, really game-ending fumble by the 49ers, and the Giants would go to a Super Bowl. You can't underestimate how important special teams are. And not having Ted Ginn that day did cost the 49ers a trip to the Super Bowl. Now, this could be a very long review. We could talk about these games for hours and hours and hours. We could. This is just a brief review of the 10 most painful, the worst playoff losses in the history of the San Francisco 49ers. If the 49ers had won, they would have gone up against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And you never want to assume anything against the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, but that was not exactly the strongest Patriots team. They were a beatable team, and just the fact that that New York Giants team beat them, it was a beatable Patriots team. I don't know if the 49ers would have won, but I sure would have liked to have seen them try and have an attempt and give it a crack at taking the Patriots down. And the reason I said at the beginning I didn't think this was so bad at the time was, well, there'd be other opportunities. And there were other opportunities. But this was the only championship game the 49ers, with Harbaugh, the Harbaugh 49ers, would host at home. They would get to 3 straight conference championship games, but they would never win a Super Bowl. They lost this one in overtime at home. I mean, losing on your home field in overtime, it's really bad. It is a sore loss. And it's very difficult to get over. Losing at home in overtime. Then you get through the next season against Atlanta, but then you lose in the Super Bowl, another heartbreaker, the Ravens. Oh, we'll get to that. And then the heartbreaker in Seattle, the championship game. So you had those 3 attempts. Of all of them, this was the game that was there for you to take. At home, against a team, at least on paper, you're superior to, and yet you handed them the game. And you'd already beaten them in the regular season at home as well. But that's what I'm talking about. You just don't know how many shots you're going to get at it. And this one was disappointing. And this one was well worthy of this spot as one of the worst losses 49ers have ever had. Number 6. The 2013 NFC Championship game. 49ers at Seahawks. Who are the 49ers rivals? I immediately think of playoff rivals because of the type of franchise the 49ers have been over the decades. Because for so many years, it was Super Bowl or bust. The expectation was to get in. Naturally, you think of the Cowboys, the New York Giants, the Packers. And then the 4th team is the Seahawks, not the Rams. The Seahawks. I have never really considered the Rams much of a rival. And I'm a big history fan of the NFL. But there have been more meaningful, major regular season game and playoff games just in the last 15 seasons between the 49ers and the Seahawks. And this one is number 1. This one takes the cake. And the context of this game is something that's huge too. Because if you remember, the 49ers in the 2 previous games in Seattle were embarrassed. They were both Sunday night games, and they were not even close. They were blowout victories by the Seahawks. They were embarrassing, humiliating losses on national television, and the 49ers couldn't even compete. But what gave them some hope was the last regular season game at Candlestick, the 49ers did win. and they did beat the Seahawks late in the season. But when you went up to Seattle, it's a different story. That environment, and it was louder then than it is now. I mean, that was the peak of the Seahawks' 12th man and the home field advantage that they had, unlike any other team. Oh, it's still very good. It's not like what it was then. So to go in and to expect the win, I mean, you have to be honest about the expectation here. I was not expecting a win. Hopeful, had some hope, but did I really expect the 49ers to win? No. I remember when I was just making picks, I, of course, went with Seattle. I wasn't a homer. I was taking the Seahawks to win. I'm not just a blind 49ers fan. But unlike those games, the regular season games, primetime games, they were big. The 49ers got off to a good start. Aldon Smith forcing the fumble on Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson tormented the 49ers. And the 49ers got the ball about the 15-yard line at the start of the game. Unfortunately, they had to settle for 3 because of that Seahawks defense. In all due respect to the 2025 Seahawks defense, this defense, the 2013 defense, was better. And this was the Super Bowl. I know it's thrown around a lot, but truly, the 49ers Seahawks championship game, it was the Super Bowl that season. These were great teams. And the 25 divisional game a few weeks ago between the 49ers and Seahawks, again, couldn't even compare. Doesn't even come close to approaching what these two teams were, and just the number of players that were either Hall of Fame players, will be Hall of Fame players, or at least Hall of Fame talents out there. But getting back to this, the 49ers went up, 3-0. At least you got on the scoreboard. At least you scored first. It was disappointing they didn't get a touchdown. Colin Kaepernick had some big runs. He had 130 yards rushing on 11 carries. Not much in terms of passing yards because of that Legion of Boom defense. I mean, they shut down the passing game. Kaepernick had a 58-yard run, credible run. With Kaepernick, it wasn't always that he had the greatest acceleration, but once he got up to top speed, look out. Those long strides. At the 10-minute mark of the second quarter, 49ers went on 4th and goal, and they got the touchdown. They went up 10-0 up in Seattle in the championship game, right, early second quarter. But they would only score 7 points the rest of the way. At times, Kaepernick was brilliant. We'll get back to that. At halftime, it would be 10-3. 10-3 at halftime. In the third quarter, though, Marshawn Lynch had a 40-yard run. And in many ways, it was a game-changing run because at this point, the Seahawks weren't able to get in the end zone. Another one of those great runs, and this was a killer. And Eric Reid took a bad route. And Eric Reid, we'll get back to Eric Reid too, he had a bad game. And a major difference between the two teams was Lynch was able to run the ball. Gore was not. I mean, Kaepernick gashed the Seahawks several times, but the 49ers weren't able to get anything going on the ground game with Frank Gore. But the mistakes would come back. Too many turnovers, too many big plays by the Seahawks. At the 6:30 mark in the third quarter, the 49ers would score their last points. Another extraordinary play by Kaepernick. He throws a strike to Anquan Boldin. It's sort of a hop and a jump. And this was, I don't know who can pull off some of these plays. I mean, how many quarterbacks in the league right now could do what Colin Kaepernick does? You can't deny how great of a talent he was. I mean, he burned out of the league for a couple reasons. It was off the field things, of course. He wasn't great at reading defenses, but for those couple seasons, I mean, maybe only Josh Allen can physically. I'd have to give it more thought. Maybe Josh Allen, you could say, or Caleb Williams could do some of the things that Colin Kaepernick physically could do at that point. But even so, I mean, Caleb makes these incredible throws, but he doesn't pull off these runs like Kaepernick. But what happened after that touchdown, the 49ers would go up 17-10. But the Seahawks immediately respond, and Baldwin returns the ball past midfield. Yet the defense managed to hold the Seahawks to 3. Fourth quarter. Aldon Smith. I don't want to rip Aldon Smith too much as the player. Aldon Smith was a Hall of Fame talent. He was a better version of Jason Pierre-Paul. It's just such a shame that he had all the off-the-field incidents, that he couldn't get more help, because he was that good. He should have been a Hall of Famer. Such a great talent. Not wasted, but a career cut short. But this was a bad play for Aldon Smith. And overall, he had a very good game, but not for this play. I mean, he made big plays. But he jumps off sides, and it's a free play, and he just stops rushing. And credit to Russell Wilson being the heady quarterback that he was, and people make so much fun of Russell Wilson now. Russell Wilson, again, killed the 49ers. Owned the 49ers. We saw his escape artist act, his Houdini act, for years, and I believe he does belong in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he got the Seahawks to 2 Super Bowls. Should have won 2 Super Bowls. Great player. I mean, you're not going to say he was the best quarterback in the league, but top 5? Yeah, he was a top 5 quarterback. Well, Russell Wilson knows it's a free play, goes for the end zone, and it's a touchdown to Curse, a 35-yard touchdown. Next drive, Kaepernick gets stripped by Averill. It's recovered by Bennett, and the Seahawks are set up. They are really set up to take this game over. And this was such an intense game. It was an intense fourth quarter. It was wild. And what happens, though, now that the Seahawks have the ball? Tragic play. The NaVorro Bowman injury. He's tackling Curse, then Eric Reid runs into him. And I'm trying not to get all over Reid. I know he's trying to make a good football play, but Bowman's bringing him down. He really hits Bowman more than he hits Curse. And it's a gruesome injury. Gruesome knee injury that you don't want to look at too many times. The result is Bowman tears his ACL and MCL. I mean, NaVorro Bowman, forget about the play for a moment. NaVorro Bowman was one of my all-time favorite 49ers. I know it was only a short period, but if you watched him those few seasons, 11, 12, 13, he was a warrior out there. And he should have won Defensive Player of the Year that year. Again, all due respect to Luke Kuechly, I felt Luke Kuechly, as great as he was, stole NaVorro Bowman's DPOY. Sure, you could say, okay, Bowman's playing next to Patrick Willis, but that was a special season Bowman had that year, including the playoffs. And he, although he's playing right next to Patrick Willis, and Justin Smith was on that defense, and a great player like Aldon Smith, not that he was any kind of leader, but Bowman was the heart and soul of the D, and he would return. Again, he'd missed the whole 14 season. He'd return in 15. He was never the same. He could still play, but not close to what he was before this injury. And it was another massive 49ers injury, playoff injury. And you have a relatively young player, and his career was ruined because he would have another, he would experience another significant injury, after he returned in the league. And you want to talk about a shortened career for a different reason. It was with Aldon Smith and the off the field things, and then Bowman. He too, if he could have continued playing and without an injury like this, he's a Hall of Fame player. It was crushing injury, and it's one of the worst 49er injuries. I mean, the 49ers in terrible playoff losses, heartbreaking playoff losses, heartbreaking injuries. Find me on our team who's lost so many big players in games. But all that went wrong on that play, Bowman was still able to strip the ball and recover it. And the thing that was maddening about all, what did the official say? Oh, it's still Seattle ball. I mean, the ball came out way before Kearse went down, and Bowman's on his back with the ball, holding on the ball while he just suffered this ACL-MCL tear. I mean, like I said, what a player. So the Seahawks are at the goal line, and the 49ers still stop them on the goal line after that emotional injury that could have just completely taken them out of the game. And it didn't. That was the type of team this was. And it didn't. And they stopped the Seahawks. Lynch loses the ball. 49ers get it back. They're still in it. Believe it or not, they're still in it. But Kaepernick, as the 49ers get the ball back, he underthrows a ball. It gets intercepted. And the defense holds again. It's 23-17, and it came down to one final drive. I mean, this may be the longest review of all the games, because that's how this game was. It wasn't the worst loss, but it was bad, very bad. Came down to one final drive, and Colin Kaepernick continued to make some great plays. I mean, really, some of the plays that Kaepernick made. It was a game of high highs and low lows. But where did this thing end? The 49ers were at the 18-yard line. 30 seconds left. Yes, time is ticking, but they have 2 timeouts. And Kaepernick decides to go for it all. And he challenges Richard Sherman, of all the defensive backs in that Legion of Boom. He challenges Richard Sherman, trying to get it to Crabtree, forcing this ball in there. Sherman knocks it up in the air. It's intercepted by Smith, and that's that. The game is over. That sealed it. And you have to sit there and say again, high highs and low lows. Why did he force it? Why did he rush it? You have 2 timeouts in your pocket. Just even if you could get the ball to the 10-yard line, the 5-yard line, you still would have another timeout left. I remember thinking that and saying that when it occurred, and I'm still saying it now. Oh, with everything that went wrong, they were still that close to defeating that great team, an all-time great defense. They almost got in the Super Bowl. They almost upset the Seahawks in Seattle. That Seahawks team. And they couldn't do it. And what happens? The Seahawks go to the Super Bowl. They destroy and annihilate the Broncos. They win the Super Bowl. And of all the teams that gave them the biggest challenge and almost found a way to pull it off, it was the 49ers. With all that adversity, the ways they hurt themselves, they shot themselves in the foot, but then the Bowman injury and all that. And they almost pulled it off. But you lose to a rival, division rival. But this game closed the window. The door was closed. This game closed the 49ers window. The Seahawks closed the door on the 49ers. They would never reach the playoffs again with this group, with this coach, with this quarterback. And it made the Giants' loss in 2011 all that much worse. It made the loss to the Ravens the year before in the Super Bowl all that much worse. They couldn't pull it off then. These were great teams. They made it to the championship game. At least made it to the championship game. Those 3 seasons. And to lose like that. I mean, what's worse? The only thing that's worse that I could think of is what the Bills experienced 4 years in a row. Number 5, 2021 NFC Championship game. No game pisses me off on this list more than this one. I'm not saying it's the worst loss, but this one gets to me to this day more than any other of these 10 worst losses. Coming into this title game, the Niners had swept the Rams in the regular season for 3 consecutive seasons. 19, even 20, which was an injury-plagued season. They swept the Rams. And then 21, this very season, swept the Rams. The 49ers beat the Rams in the final game to get in the playoffs. Same situation, same field in Los Angeles. Defeated them in overtime to make it in as a wild card. So, what were the expectations? Well, we were confident because we matched up well against the Rams. To this point, Shanahan sort of owned McVay. Outplayed him. So there was a lot of confidence. But at the same time, you could never be too confident because, for one reason, Jimmy Garoppolo was your quarterback. Now, Jimmy won a lot of games, and that's brought up and was brought up so many times on big broadcasts and primetime games. Why did he have so much success? Shanahan, and he was usually backed up by the best all-around roster in football. But you really had an average quarterback, and it's a quarterback's league. Right? This is the quarterback era, and you can't win with defense like you used to. This wasn't 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s football. You need to have a top 10 quarterback, or close to it. Quarterback that really can make big plays. And Garoppolo was the reason why you had reservations. You couldn't come into the game and saying, yeah, we're going to take this. Not with Garoppolo. To the game. It was actually a scoreless first quarter. The biggest play of the first quarter was Jimmy Ward intercepting Stafford in the end zone. And the 49ers always did well against Stafford. Because to me, Stafford, he'll end up in the Hall of Fame. He has great numbers. Very good quarterback. He's just won an MVP in the 2025 season. But he's no top 10 quarterback. He would have a hard time being in the discussion as a top 20 quarterback ever. The 49ers had success against him because not really a mobile quarterback, pocket quarterback could usually get to him and pressure him with 4 without blitzing. And that's the secret of beating great quarterbacks. That's how the Giants upset the Patriots. The great 07 Patriots was pressuring Brady with 4 without blitzing. And that was the recipe for success for the 49ers. But in the second quarter, Stafford would connect to Cooper Kupp, who had an all-time season that year. All-time season for a receiver, by far his best season of his career. So the Rams scored first, got the first touchdown, went up 7-0, but the 49ers responded with Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver screen, that deadly wide receiver screen that Shanahan had in the 49ers offense there those couple years with Deebo Samuel. Deebo may not have had the season that Cooper Kupp had, but he had one of the most memorable, unique seasons as that hybrid receiver running back. It was by far the best season of his career. It was an all-pro season. And the 49ers were able to add 3 heading into halftime. So on the road, 10-7 at half. That's good. That's good. And I'll say this too, that the Rams did not have a home field advantage. I mean, it was a 50-50 crowd. The 49ers take over Los Angeles, and it's, if not almost leaning more towards a home game for the 49ers in most cases, and this was no different. The third quarter, the 49ers stopped the Rams on a crucial 4th down. The 49ers were able to go up 17-7 when Garoppolo connects with George Kittle in the end zone, and that was at the 1:59 mark. But get this, they never score again. At the 1:59 mark in the third quarter, the 49ers were up 17-7. Did not score again. I mean, the 49ers really won the second quarter. They won the third quarter. But man, did they lose the fourth quarter. As Stafford was sharp in the fourth quarter, and the 49ers made big-time mistakes in the fourth quarter. So they had a 17-7 lead in the fourth quarter. A 10-point lead. Does that sound familiar? Super Bowl 54, 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. You got a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter in this title game, the NFC title game, and you lose again. So in that fourth quarter, the Rams respond with another Stafford to Kupp touchdown. Then there was the Tart interception that was dropped. And even Joe Buck on the broadcast said it was unbelievable because it was the easiest interception anyone's ever going to get. The whole game was not that should have been interception, that dropped interception. But what a blown opportunity for a turnover. Instead, what happens? The Rams go down the field and get another 3, so they tie at 17-7. And the 49ers offense continued to stall on offense. So the offense stalled. The Rams were able to get more pressure, and Garoppolo really struggled in the fourth quarter. The Rams were able to get another field goal at the 146 mark to go up by 3. So it's 20-17. And this is not what you want. You do not want Garoppolo with the ball down 3. It's one thing maybe to be tied, but saying, okay, what's your confidence level with Jimmy Garoppolo and the football deep in your own territory, and you have to get 3 with under 2 minutes to go, based off of a fourth quarter that he struggled through. I mean, he threw a ball that should have been intercepted, and it wasn't. He actually statistically was having a good game. He did avoid the major mistake. But what happened? I mean, this came down to one play. They really couldn't get anything going at the end of the game. It was a 3rd down, and the pocket kind of collapses, and he needs to get the ball out fast. He doesn't, and he's left with the decision. It looks like he's going to get sacked by Aaron Donald. Do you take the big sack, and it's going to be 4th and forever, or do you try to do something? And he tried to do something. He did do something. And he flings the ball up kind of sideways towards Hasty, the running back. He overshoots him, and it's intercepted, and the game is over. One of the ugliest plays you're going to see. I'm not saying it was an easy decision, because it would have been like a 4th and 20. But they couldn't do anything on 1st down, couldn't do anything on 2nd down. The ball has to come out. You just need to at least make it a 4th and short. He can't get rid of the ball. Then he's put in that situation. He puts himself in that situation. He would have been sacked, but instead he just flings the ball up carelessly. It gets intercepted, and that ended it. It was a sore loss, a painful loss, because you owned these guys. And fresh in our minds, it opened up the wound from Super Bowl 54, because that was the last loss we had in the playoffs. Having a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter, and then having this 10-point 4th quarter lead evaporate and lose. Shanahan and Garoppolo failed again, and with different pieces this time. I mean, this was a non-Christian McCaffrey team, or a pre-Christian McCaffrey team, but you had Brandon Ayuk, you had different pieces in there, you had different players in there. But when the pressure was on, the coach tightened up. The quarterback played tight. And it happened again. McVay made it more of a priority to get the ball to his backup tight end, Blanton, than Kyle Shanahan made it a priority to get to a great playmaker like George Kittle. You know, the weakness of the Rams' defense was their linebacker play. I wonder why he didn't use George Kittle more as a receiver and attack that. And that was always been a problem with Shanahan in the playoffs. It's just like, oh, well, we'll use Kittle if we can. One of the most dynamic tight ends after the catch in NFL history. And you don't use him? It's insane. And the 49ers would have won this game with either Kaepernick or Purdy. I believe that. Either of them. But Garoppolo had his weaknesses, all right. And I can accept losing a big game to Patrick Mahomes. You can lose to an all-time great. This one was more difficult to take. This one was harder to swallow 49ers owned the Rams. This was a neutral field game. You had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. There was no home field advantage. You had every reason to be confident. You should have put them away, and you didn't. And when the Rams were celebrating after the game, it was the only time I've ever said, we should be there, and we are undoubtedly the better team. We are the superior team. But we were not the better team that day. And it's true, the 49ers were the best team that season, but the best team doesn't always win it all. Number 4, the 1990 NFC Championship game. Giants at 49ers. I was too young to see this game live, but I am a student of the game. I've done my research, watched the game in full, watched the highlights again. This game deserves to be this high on the list. 49ers were 14-2 in 1990. They had the best record in the entire NFL. They were the number 1 seed in the NFC. Joe Montana was the MVP. The 49ers were attempting to be the first NFL franchise to three-peat. Steelers didn't do it. 49ers were going for it. This is not the first time the Giants made our list. We already saw the 2011 NFC Championship game, and this would remind you of that one. That would remind you of this one. Because with all due respect to the Giants, from a talent perspective, they were not as good as the 49ers. They were a very good team. They had a great defense. But they were not as good as the 49ers. Yet, they went into San Francisco and upset the 49ers at Candlestick Park. Now, they had played each other Week 13, a Monday night game, an all-time great regular season Monday night game, and the 49ers won 7-3. So you knew it would be a low-scoring defensive game. And the strategy of the Giants was ball control, protecting the football, keeping the ball away from Joe Montana, the 49ers offense, playing the clock, playing physical, dominating time of possession. That was the formula of the Giants. And it was also the formula that they used in the Super Bowl. When they went beyond this, it worked to upset the 49ers. It worked to upset the Bills. They had something. 49ers scored 3 on their opening drive. Giants responded with a field goal. Giants would pull ahead 6-3 before halftime. But the 49ers were able to get 3 as well. So it was 6-6 at halftime. In the third quarter, it was the biggest play of the game. You would say, well, it was the largest, it was the most exciting play of the game. 61-yard touchdown from Montana to Taylor. But the 49ers would not score again. They were shut out in the fourth quarter, and then the Giants would just be chipping away. Added field goals. They responded with a field goal, 13-9. Barr did miss a field goal, 37-yard field goal. But the game-changing play came in the fourth quarter. Leonard Marshall hits Joe Montana, and it resulted in a broken hand, cracked ribs, and a bruised sternum. It was not only a game-changing play, it was a season-changing play. It was a franchise-changing play for the 49ers, which we'll get back to. The 49ers were able to stop the Giants on a 3rd and short. But they called a fake punt that worked, and it led to another field goal. Made it 13-12. 49ers get the ball back, and you figure if they're just able to go down the field, maybe even get a field goal, just milk the clock themselves, that would be good enough. Instead, Steve Young hands the ball off to Roger Craig. He fumbles it, and it's recovered by Lawrence Taylor. Instead of the 49ers winding down the clock to head to the Super Bowl, the Giants get the ball back at about midfield. Hostetler made big plays throughout this. I mean, Phil Simms was out, but Jeff Hostetler could do some things that Phil Simms couldn't do. He was more athletic. He made big plays with his legs, extending plays. He bought time, and he made some just on-point throws as a backup quarterback. But obviously, very talented backup quarterback that the Giants had in him. And it set up the Giants in place to make a game-winning field goal. And Barr made it. And the Giants upset this great 49ers team. And as Pat Summerall said, there will be no three-peat. Devastating loss. One of the greatest victories in the history of the New York Giants, but devastating loss for the 49ers because the game changed when Montana went out. I want to get back to Leonard Marshall's hit on Joe Montana. We called it not only season-changing, I called it a franchise-changing play for the 49ers because it didn't just stop them from getting to the Super Bowl. It really ended Joe Montana's career with the 49ers. He was the MVP, and the 49ers were on top of the football world. No one at that point really ever had it better because they tied the Steelers with their fourth Super Bowl in '89. They were going for the three-peat. If the 49ers get into the Super Bowl, they're beating the Bills. I mean, I respect the Bills. They were beating Bills, and they would have three-peated. Steve Young becomes the starting quarterback in 91. 49ers don't even make it to the playoffs. 92, they were the favorites. They get defeated by the Cowboys, and the Cowboys start their own dynasty. We talked about that already. They wouldn't get back to the Super Bowl until 1994. They would win their fifth, and they would be the first to do it. Right? They would be on top of the football world yet again and be the first to 5. Still have the pennant and one for the thumb that my dad got. One for the thumb, showing all 5 rings. I mean, it was huge to be on top of the football world. Didn't know what it was like. Too young. But what if Montana didn't get hurt? I mean, he could have been playing in 91, 92, 93, 94. How many Super Bowls would the 49ers, how many Super Bowls could they have won if Montana didn't get hurt? I mean, he would have gotten 5, maybe even 6, if it wasn't for this injury. And you wonder, too, when the points were at such a premium, with points being at such a premium, who was missed in this game? Bill Walsh. With all due respect to George Seifert, the offensive mind of Bill Walsh. The 49ers only managed 13 points at home. And this was the number 1 defense in the New York Giants that season. And you could have the debate which defense was better, the 86 or the 90. 86 had Harry Carson and George Martin. It had Lawrence Taylor at the peak of his powers, perhaps the greatest defensive season in NFL history by a defender. This was a great defense too, but not a Lawrence Taylor in his prime. No Harry Carson. But in my opinion, this was the best coaching job by Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick, who, as we said, gave the 49ers all kinds of problems. 49ers lost in 85, and then in 86, when the Giants were the favorite, that's why I wouldn't say that was necessarily their greatest season as coaching-wise. It was the greatest team, but 90 was the greatest season because they were able to do this with a lesser team. Very good team, but they were able to do this with a lesser team. The loss in 86 was the most humiliating loss in 49ers history because we've just gone through all these games. There have been so many close, heartbreaking games. The Giants destroyed the 49ers that day, but the ones that stick with you are these close ones and the ones you should have won, especially when they're on your own field. Brilliant coaching by Parcells and Belichick, and the Giants would get their second Super Bowl. I would go on to say this was one of the greatest upsets in NFL history. That's how big it was for a non-Super Bowl. And this deserves to be in this place as the worst non-Super Bowl loss in 49ers franchise history. Number 3, and now we've arrived at the Super Bowls. Super Bowl 47. 49ers, Ravens, the Harbaugh. The 2011 season was a rough ending with losing on your home field in overtime to the New York Giants. 49ers made it back to the championship game on the road, but defeated the Falcons. Came back to defeat the Falcons and earned a spot in the Super Bowl against the Baltimore Ravens. And my thinking in this game was, well, we have the better team. 49ers did have the better team. Not by a significant margin. Ravens were a good team. The Ravens were a hot team. Ravens were a well-coached team. We didn't have to face Tom Brady. And at that point, I was thinking, hey, we dodged a bullet. Don't have to face one of the all-time greats. And Brady going up against Belichick and Patriots. So you got the Ravens instead. The 49ers came out tight. They were not as well prepared as the Ravens. First play from scrimmage. 49ers were flagged for an illegal formation. Vernon Davis. And every time I saw Jerome Boger, after that call of the illegal formation on offense, I could only think of that one play in the start of that Super Bowl. And it put them in a hole immediately. Kaepernick completes a pass to start, and then you get backed up. It gets called back. The first offensive play of the game, flag. Wiped out a 20-yard pass to Vernon Davis. But it was Vernon Davis' fault. He was the one that caused the penalty. The Ravens would strike first. It was Flacco to Bolden. And Bolden was a problem. He was tough on one-on-one matchups. If you threw the ball in really a really tight window, he would win those matchups. He was one of the great possession receivers and one of the strongest-handed receivers I could ever think of, Anquan Bolden. tough, physical, thick, muscular. The perfect complement to a speed receiver. And that's what the Ravens had. They had Torrey Smith, who could fly on the other side. They also had Jacoby Jones, who could fly. And then you had one of really the ultimate possession receivers. Who would be the closest thing to an Anquan Boldin right now in the NFL? I'd have to say A.J. Brown is the closest comparison to an Anquan Boldin. He's just built like a tank. And even though this game got off to a bad start, the 49ers were able to respond with a field goal, and starting the second quarter, it was 7-3. It was not out of hand at any point, but in the second quarter, the wheels came off. Michael James had a costly fumble when the 49ers were driving, getting into the red zone. He's trying to do too much, get down, get out of bounds. No, he fumbles the ball, and the Ravens go right down the field, get a touchdown. It's 14-3. Flacco connects to Pitta, and then 49ers get the ball back, and Kaepernick right away overthrows his receiver. I think it was Randy Moss. It wasn't even close. And he gets intercepted by Ed Reed. Probably the best cover safety in NFL history. And the 49ers in the first half made the Ravens defense look good. And I'm not just trying to knock the Ravens defense, but this was not exactly one of the great Ravens defenses. Because, okay, you had Halil Nada, Terrell Suggs, future Hall of Famer, Ed Reed. Well, Suggs will get in the Hall of Fame. Ed Reed, Hall of Famer, at tail end of his prime, but still really good. But Ray Lewis was right at the end. I mean, to say that he was a shell of himself would probably even be a compliment. He's a shadow of what he was, not even close. He was at the very end of his career, and there were some places where you could expose the Ravens defense, and that was seen in the second half. But the 49ers were really fighting themselves. I think they came out really tight, tense. I mean, you had a young quarterback in Kaepernick, first Super Bowl for him too. It was the first Super Bowl for both these quarterbacks, and the only Super Bowl for Flacco and Kaepernick, right? Unless Flacco gets back somehow, some way. He hasn't retired yet. When the Ravens get the ball back, they have a fake field goal, and the 49ers do stop them. But they're not able to do anything on offense. And arguably the worst play of the game is what takes place on the next Ravens scoring drive. And it was a touchdown pass from Flacco to Jacoby Jones. A 56-yard touchdown throw. And it was just an embarrassing play. And Chris Culliver, I mean, he bit on a double move by Jones, and then on top of it, Jones makes the catch, he falls down, and he fails to tackle him. He goes all the way around him. It was one of the worst individual plays by a defensive back in Super Bowl history. The 49ers secondary was, they were picked on. Cornerbacks, safeties, it was a rough game for them, and as great as the 49ers front seven was, and they had a great front seven. Aldon Smith, Justin Smith, Willis, Bowman, Brooks. The secondary could be attacked. They too could be exposed. Talk about the Ravens defense could be exposed. Well, the secondary of the 49ers, it was a bad Super Bowl for them. Not exactly the best coverage secondary. And, if they didn't get to Flacco. The secondary was in trouble. And when Flacco needed to make plays, he made plays. And when he had to just make quick, short, concise passes, short step drops, their receivers won one-on-one, especially Anquan Bolden. At that point, it's 21-3. 49ers get the ball before half. Once again, they can't get a touchdown. They want to get points. They don't want to go down 21-3, but 21-6, even if it could have been 21-10, it would have felt much different. The play that really broke the Camels' back was the kick return. The opening of the third quarter, the Jacoby Jones 108-yard kick return. I mean, that's another one. If you could have just held them down, let's just say even 3 points, that it could have been 24-6, it would have been different. And it is sort of controversial whether there was actually holding of Bruce Miller on that kick return or not. I don't care. Inexcusable either way to give that up. Coming right out of the gate from halftime. The 49ers get the ball back after that kick return. And then you have the blackout. The Super Bowl blackout in the Superdome that lasted over 30 minutes. It came in at 34-minute blackout. Then the next 49ers drive after the kickoff return, the blackout happened. It lasted over 30 minutes. It was a 34-minute delay. Blackout at the Superdome. And that's when many felt the momentum actually shifted to the 49ers. You wouldn't think that. Or, there's a lot of controversy and there's a lot of thoughts and opinions about what happened with all of that. But let's just talk about what took place on the field. 49ers go down the field and get a touchdown. It's 28-13. Okay, there is time. And I have to say, Kaepernick, in the second half, really did play well. He made a lot of really sharp throws. I mean, at times he was spectacular, both with his arm and with his legs. It's just there were too many self-inflicted wounds in this one. Too many of those. Kaepernick was a brilliant talent. And the 49ers had a big statistical day. I mean, he threw that interception. I have to say, that interception he threw to Ed Reed, that was the first interception by a 49ers quarterback in the Super Bowl. The one that took place in the second quarter. Montana never threw any picks. Steve Young had a 6-touchdown game against the Chargers. So that was one thing that already scarred this game. And you knew, this is not going to be like the previous Super Bowls. But he did have a strong second half. I mean, the arm strength, the athleticism. Gore had a big game. Crabtree, Vern Davis. I mean, you could say that stats only mean so much. But, Kaepernick had a 300-yard passing game because they were behind the entire way. They never led once. It wasn't like watching Jimmy Garoppolo play. I'll say that about Colin Kaepernick. His downfall was what took place off the field, and at the end of the day, he was only average at reading defenses, and athleticism can only take you so far. And the league caught on to him. At that point, it's 28-13, and the 49ers got a stop, and Ginn had a great punt return, and only if they had Ted Ginn in the 2011 championship game. Frank Gore has a touchdown. It's 28-20. I mean, this game's getting close. 28-20. This is third quarter. Ray Rice has a fumble. 49ers recover it. And hey, a touchdown, extra point. You have a tie game. Akers misses a field goal, but then there's a running into the kicker. So the 49ers are able to get the 3, but not being able to get the touchdown was big. It was 28-23. Early fourth quarter, 49ers have a goal line stand against the Ravens. It's 31-23. Ravens are able to add 3. And the 49ers have the ball again. Colin Kaepernick, 15-yard touchdown run to make it 31-29. They go for the 2-point conversion. Unsuccessful. So it stays at 31-29. The Ravens are able to add 3. So it's 34-29. And then that final drive. Believe it or not, the 49ers were almost able to come back and win this. I mean, the game was actually there. And that's what makes it so painful compared to what we're going to see in number 2 and number 1, where you see leads blown. This was coming all the way back from 28-6. And they couldn't do it. I mean, Frank Gore sets them up with a big long run. They're within the 10-yard line. And they couldn't get in. No runs no special runs, no special designed runs when you have a weapon like Colin Kaepernick. 3 straight passes to Crabtree on 2nd down, 3rd down, 4th down. I mean, Crabtree was their best receiver, but you had other weapons. You had Vernon Davis. You had Frank Gore. You had Colin Kaepernick. And you keep going to Crabtree again and again. And, it's just so frustrating to watch. And although they had the 2-minute warning, although they had a timeout, it came across as the play calls were being really rushed. And not being able to get in against a Ravens defense. Like I said, their linebacker play, that could have been... You could have gone after their linebackers. Like I said, Ray Lewis. He was having a miserable time trying to cover Vernon Davis. And Vernon Davis was one of the most athletic tight ends in NFL history, considering he was legitimate 250 pounds and could run like the wind. His problem was average hands. And that's one of the reasons why he wasn't a great red zone target. Didn't have good hands. And that may have been the thinking behind, let's give all the ball to Crabtree. Crabtree's good hands. He can catch well. He can catch in traffic. Not so much with Vernon Davis. You had to get Vernon Davis in space. But not getting into the end zone at the end was just a terrible way to end. A heartbreaking way to end. The turnovers hurt him. Special teams hurt him. John Harbaugh in the Harbaugh outcoached Jim Harbaugh. 49ers had the better team, and they lost anyway. And the sad part about all this, with this group, with Harbaugh, Kaepernick, they would never return to the Super Bowl. At the time, as bad as the loss was, you're thinking, okay, we can get back. It is possible. But in the back of my head, though, was you knew the Seahawks were there too. In many ways, you could get back. But the Seahawks are here, and you're going to probably have to go through Seattle. And it's going to be really hard to get back. And that was true, because this group never got back, and they couldn't get through the Seahawks. And as we went over, the window closed the next season, and the team was never the same. And Harbaugh would be gone in 2 seasons. 2014 was his last season. And we thought this was about as bad as a Super Bowl loss could be. Oh, how wrong we were. Number 2, Super Bowl 54, 49ers, Chiefs. Expectations heading into Super Bowl 54. The 49ers defeated the Vikings and the Packers, but they did so with running the football in defense. Clearly, Shanahan didn't trust Jimmy G. And this game came down to ultimately this, that the Chiefs had too much offense. The 49ers couldn't put the Chiefs away. And the Chiefs forced the issue, meaning they made sure that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to have to make big plays, and he couldn't make enough big plays for the 49ers. The Chiefs had a high-powered offense. This was the peak of their offensive power. Fast strike, big play offense with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, all in their primes. In the divisional round, the Chiefs put 51 points against the Texans. And you saw the Texans had this big lead and it just evaporated. Almost as quickly as they were scoring to build that lead, they lost it. And then the Titans, the Chiefs put up 35 points. So there you have it. They put up 86 points in the 2 rounds leading into the Super Bowl. And I don't even remember who I liked going to this game. It was more, I was hopeful the 49ers would win. I knew heading into this one, Niners had a better team. There's no arguing that. And better team, better depth, deeper team. There's more talent. Better all-around team than the Chiefs had. But the Chiefs had the quarterback. They had Patrick Mahomes. They had an all-time great right there on that side of the football. And Garoppolo did as little to contribute to those divisional and championship games as you could in modern football and still come away with the W. So I had confidence, but a reserved confidence going to Super Bowl 54. And this was one of my all-time favorite 49ers teams, though, they fell short. It was one of the most memorable regular seasons. There were so many big games, whether it came down to both wins and losses. The win in New Orleans, the win in Seattle, the Greenlaw, stand at the goal line to win the division, get home field that season. It was huge. And even the losses, the overtime loss to the Seahawks, and then the loss in Baltimore. I mean, there were big games, big win against the Packers at home. I'm not going to get all into it, but that was one of the reasons why it was such a disappointing, bittersweet season, because it was even though Garoppolo was frustrating, it was a fun team. You had a young team that came together with George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa. Fred Warner he was just really starting to tap into his potential. Fred Warner. It wasn't the Fred Warner that we know of, but you saw young pieces turning into great players on both sides of the ball. It was a really good team, but they lacked the quarterback. Let's get into this game, because this is just a summary, right? We could just talk about this for hours and hours, and this ended up being much longer than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be brief, but man, these games, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of feeling, there's a lot of bad memories, there's background to go through. 49ers scored first with a field goal. All right, and this would be a theme and a constant, continuous problem in the second and the worst 49ers playoff losses, the Super Bowl losses, was kicking field goals and not getting touchdowns. Late first quarter, the Chiefs converted a big fourth down, the 5-yard line, and led to Mahomes running in for a touchdown. So 7-3 Chiefs. In the second quarter, Garoppolo's going back to pass. Instead of taking a sack, he tries to do too much. He's hit when he's thrown. He gets intercepted. But this great 49ers defense holds the Chiefs, and they keep it to a 10-3 game. And the 49ers are able to respond. Kyle Juszczyk with a touchdown reception. And you have a 10-10 game. Right before halftime, the 49ers are going down the field, and George Kittle is called for a push-off. And kind of controversial. I mean, I'm not going to say he did not push off at all, but it wasn't a big push. That would have set the 49ers up for 3. Instead, they get nothing. So they head to halftime tied 10-10. And the Niners were able to hold this mighty Chiefs to 10 points. Because keep in mind what I just said, that the Chiefs scored 86 points in the first 2 playoff games. So far, they're held down to 10. The problem for the 49ers is they only have 10. Quarter 3. 49ers settle for another field goal. And you're not going to beat the all-time greats, and especially someone like Mahomes, kicking field goals. That's the lesson. So the 49ers are up 13-10. Chiefs get the ball back in that quarter, and Fred Warner comes up with a big interception of Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes really didn't make throwing mistakes. He wasn't turning the football over in these playoffs. He was great. He was almost flawless. And the 49ers were able to force multiple turnovers, hold the Chiefs down. At least we're talking about in the first half and the third quarter, and you don't come away with more points, and you don't come away with the victory. That's what left me shaking my head. You were able to force not just one interception, you're only at 2 interceptions. And Raheem Mostert gets a touchdown, and things are looking good at that point in the third quarter. So it's 20-10, and to that point, Jimmy G is having a good, efficient game. Just take away that interception. He was very efficient, and he was playing well. It's 20-10, and the 49ers won the third quarter. They outscored the Chiefs 10-0 in the third quarter. And you're feeling good. You're not getting too excited, but you're feeling good heading into the fourth quarter. And the Chiefs are held to 10 points through 3. Early fourth quarter, the 49ers intercept Mahomes a second time. That was the second interception. And that was huge because the Chiefs were in field goal range. So most likely, at the least, they're going to make this a 20-13 game. Instead, they come up with nothing. 49ers, Moore gets the interception. And the 49ers, after that Mostert touchdown, never scored again in the third quarter. They would get shut out for the rest of the game. Now, that reminds you of something. The 49ers had a 10-point lead against who? 2 years later. The Rams on the road in the conference championship game. When they had that 10-point lead, they never scored again. Looking back at the third quarter in Super Bowl 54, the 49ers took a 20-10 lead, and they would never score again. They would get shut out. And in the moment when they get that second interception off Mahomes, and Mahomes is looking very human. He just had 2 balls intercepted. He throws this ball. It's behind Tyreek Hill. It's a bad throw. I mean, he made 2 bad throws, and the 49ers made him pay. And I was starting to think, early fourth quarter, are they really going to do this? Are they really going to win? I mean, you had to think that because the Chiefs had, in the second half, nothing going. Nothing going, and the 49ers just need to add on. Even if they just get 3, you're thinking, hey, 23-10, okay. There's not a lot of game left. Time's ticking in the fourth quarter. The 49ers have all the momentum, but nothing happens on offense. Nothing happens on offense. 49ers have the ball, but it ends up in a punt. And with just under 10 minutes, the 49ers are up by 10. And they would surrender 21 unanswered points to the Chiefs in less than 10 minutes. The defining play of the game was the 3rd and 15 play for the Chiefs. They have the ball, and Mahomes bombs it to Tyreek Hill for 44 yards on 3rd and 15. And you're saying, great play by the Chiefs. Maybe the most exciting play in the whole game was that throw from Mahomes to Hill. But when you're watching the replay, Nick Bosa is in a chokehold. Where was the holding penalty? No holding penalty called. Should have had was a 3rd and 25. Instead, you had this miraculous 3rd and 15 conversion by Mahomes. And it was blatant. It was obvious. It wasn't just a temporary little hold. You know, the Chiefs' offensive lineman has his whole arm around Bosa's neck while he's trying to get in on Mahomes. And another really disappointing, frustrating thing was the 49ers had their best defensive line that year. Bosa was incredible as a rookie. I know people make jokes about the Bosa brothers and, oh, they can't stay healthy and they're overrated. Nick Bosa is not overrated. Nick Bosa, for sure, is a top 5 defensive end edge rusher in the NFL when he's out there and he's healthy. He's a force. And you can't, and even the numbers don't do him justice. Sacks alone don't do him justice. And you're just looking at the best defensive players in the history of the 49ers. You're saying Ronnie Lott, Patrick Willis. You go back to the 70s, Jimmy Johnson. And who else is in that conversation? Bryant Young, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. I mean, those have to be the best defensive players in the history of the 49ers. Dave Wilcox, that's another. Those are probably, let's say, about the 7 greatest defensive players in the history of the 49ers. Nick Bosa, with all due respect to Bryant Young, is the better player. Bryant Young's in the Hall of Fame. Nick Bosa is a better player than Bryant Young was. But my point was, they had what Greg Papa calls the gold rush. We're not talking about the cheerleaders, not the 49ers cheerleaders, the gold rush. No, he called the defensive line the gold rush. It was Bosa, Buckner. One of the worst decisions the 49ers ever did was not to pay DeForest Buckner. Bosa and Buckner were a great duo. It sort of reminded you of Justin Smith and Aldon Smith from the Harbaugh days. Eric Armstead and Dee Ford. And the 49ers ever since have been trying to get that kind of pass rush, and they never have. And they wasted it that year. They squandered it. And Nick Bosa had a great game. Buckner had a great game. But that play is the one that stays in our minds. That 3rd and 15 conversion that should not have been. It would have been 3rd and 25. And I don't think the Chiefs were going to make the first down on 3rd and 25. And what would have been most likely? Maybe they would have made it 4th and 10. But there would have been an enormous amount of pressure on the Chiefs. It's doubtful the Chiefs would have picked up that first down. And if they don't get that first down, stick a fork in them, it's over. They're done. They're done. 49ers could have just melted the clock down. And that would have been the game. Instead, the Chiefs are in prime position to score. Pass interference is called in the end zone when Mahomes goes to Kelce. And then Mahomes goes right back to Kelce. And they get the touchdown. And it's now a 20, just like that. It's a 20-17 game. It felt like it should have been so much more, right? That's just how it is with Kyle Shanahan. It should have been so much more. It should have had so many more points. It should have piled on. Nope. Couldn't put a team away. That's what defines Kyle Shanahan as a coach. And I'm not here to dump on Kyle Shanahan. He is a very good coach. But he's not a great coach. He's a very good coach. He has his flaws. He has his shortcomings. And a failure to put teams away is at the top. The 49ers get the ball back after the touchdown. And I want to note, too, Mahomes did not throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl until just over 6 minutes remaining in regulation. Then the defense was amazing. It was a rough quarter. Jimmy G was, for most of the game, actually outplaying Mahomes. But when the game really mattered and when the pressure was on, Mahomes stepped up and Jimmy couldn't. It was a rough quarter for Jimmy. He had to win the game. The 49ers couldn't get anything done. Chiefs get the ball back. Mahomes has a big play to Watkins. And then it's the TD to Williams. And the Chiefs take the lead. That 10-point lead, gone. In a matter of minutes, gone. It was 24-20. And what's even worse was a field goal wouldn't do it. You got to get in the end zone now. You got to drive down with Jimmy G. And the 49ers do, when they got the ball back, they were moving down the field. And another play that's burned into our minds was Garoppolo going deep for it all to Emmanuel Sanders. He's open. It's going to take a great throw. Not a perfect throw, but it will take a great throw. It will take accuracy and touch. But he overthrows him. And he can't even get a throw off on 4th down. Turnover on downs. Chiefs get the ball back. And the 49ers sell out to stop the run. And then Williams goes for 38 yards. And the game was over. That sealed it. What once, a short time ago, was a 20-10 game, suddenly was a 31-20 Chiefs lead. It was 20-10 49ers in that quarter. And it swung to 31-10. Chiefs outscored the 49ers 21-0 in the fourth quarter. A 21-point collapse in less than 10 minutes. And, you compare the two Super Bowls and you say, well, which one makes you more sick? Super Bowl 47 or Super Bowl 54? Because it was the worst of both worlds. Not the best of both worlds, the worst of both worlds. Because in Super Bowl 47, your team came out tight and didn't play well under Jim Harbaugh. The great comeback against Baltimore, and it falls just short. This one, you had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, and you cough it up. You give up the lead. This one, though it was the first time they were in the playoffs with this group, made me way, way more sick than Super Bowl 47 because you were tied at halftime, you won the third quarter, early fourth quarter, things are looking really good, and you just have to play smart. You just need to add some points on. Don't make any mistakes. And, it's just terrible. It's just terrible. And then Garoppolo again. I didn't even mention this. Garoppolo, you're down by 11. You have one final drive, and he gets intercepted again. Second interception of the game. I mean, he couldn't do anything in the fourth quarter. Nothing. Look at Mahomes making the big plays, and Jimmy couldn't do it. And I'm not putting it all on Jimmy. No, but he had a lousy fourth quarter, to put it nicely. We'll keep it G-rated. He had a lousy fourth quarter. But I had a lot of problems with the strategy on offense because the 49ers had things that were working and they abandoned them. Deebo Samuel was having a huge game, trick plays, just get the ball in this man's hand. They stopped going to him in the second half. And they didn't use George Kittle like they should have. I know that Chiefs defense was not that strong. Well coached, yes, by Steve Spagnuolo. Absolutely. Well prepared, yes. But that was not a great Chiefs defense. That was an offensive-driven team, a high-powered, offensive, quick-strike team, not a great defensive team. That defense could be had, and that's what pissed me off about that game, was a vulnerable defense. They had holes, and Kyle Shanahan got cute. He won. He abandoned the run. They were actually running the ball well. He abandoned the run. I mean, this was just coming off a game that they just ran the ball up and down the field against Green Bay. Mostert couldn't stop him. And you felt like he didn't get the ball enough. And then George Kittle never gets the ball enough. And Deebo is having a big game. And instead of just going to what works, Kyle gets cute. And he doesn't force the issue. He doesn't make the other team take away his best players. He just takes them away for you. He just says, well, I'm just going to stop going to these guys. Make them stop you. Prove that you can stop your best playmakers. He takes the ball out of his most explosive players' hands unless, and this is the rule, it's Christian McCaffrey. That's it. And this was the game where Kyle got the reputation of being a choker and squandering away leads. And I will say it's unfair that it seems that more of the blame goes on him than Dan Quinn for losing the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Because, yeah, the offense didn't score, but Dan Quinn's defense could not stop New England when they needed to at all either. That has to be said. But it happened twice, though, under Kyle Shanahan's watch as offensive coordinator with Atlanta and then as head coach for the 49ers. The 49ers just had a better team. Spags outcoached Kyle. And it was just a blown opportunity. And you can say they're saying, we're going to get back, we'll get back, and all that kind of stuff. It is so hard to get back to the mountaintop again. The 49ers did get back to the Super Bowl. It would have to be 4 seasons later for them to get back to the Super Bowl. And they had a healthy team. It's hard to have a healthy team under Kyle Shanahan with everything that goes on around that. But Super Bowl 54 left you... It was devastating. It was sick, but at least you could say, well, we have a young team. We do have a young team. But your confidence with Jimmy Garoppolo was very low after that. As Jimmy in the big games, he could win you playoff games. He could get you the playoffs. He won lots of regular season wins. Couldn't win the big games. Kyle and Jimmy G were a bad marriage there for a few years. And the defense, they did collapse. They broke in the second half. They gave up big plays, but the point is 20 points wasn't going to be enough to beat the Chiefs. Chiefs scored 86 in the other games. 20 points was not going to be nearly enough. You would have had to score closer to 30 to beat them. I mean, that had to be the mindset coming in. 20 wasn't enough. But we got to get to number 1. Super Bowl 58. The rematch. Chiefs again. And somehow the 49ers managed to top Super Bowl 54. What were my expectations in this one? Now, to be honest, and you can go back and listen to the Super Bowl preview, I picked the Chiefs to win. I expected the Chiefs to win for 3 reasons. Better quarterback, better head coach, and at least coming into this, during the playoffs, more consistent defense. Better defense. Not a more talented defense, but a defense that was certainly playing better coming to the Super Bowl. And a defense that was definitely superior to the one in 54. This was no longer the quick strike, high-scoring Chiefs offense. This was Patrick Mahomes more managing and picking his spots to make plays. And then being backed up by a strong defense. Not like an all-time great defense, but a strong defense at each level. Line, linebackers, secondary. Now, what made this Super Bowl loss worse was this was a better team than the team in Super Bowl 54. Brock Purdy, so much better than Garoppolo. I mean, I'm not going to say Brock Purdy's a top 5 quarterback. He's probably number 9 or 10 if I was going to do Super Bowl quarterback rankings in the league. 9, 10, or 11. Jimmy Garoppolo would not sniff a top 10 in the league when he was the starter. Purdy, you had Purdy. Love Mostert, but you had Christian McCaffrey, the offensive player of the year. And you still had stars like George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough, and it wasn't good enough for Kyle Shanahan to learn his lessons from Super Bowl 54 and losing to the Rams in the championship game, up 10 in the fourth quarter. It's almost unbelievable, but it is believable as a 49ers fan and watching a Kyle Shanahan coach team. So let's get into this. Opening possession, the 49ers are going down the field well. And Christian McCaffrey fumbles it. He's the offensive player of the year. He fumbles the ball. 49ers come away with zip. And it was a scoreless first quarter. It was a defensive first quarter. And it's fair to say, actually, both teams were better than they were in Super Bowl 54. I mean, things had changed. The Chiefs had already won 2 Super Bowls, been to 3 Super Bowls. This was their 4th Super Bowl. This is the 49ers' 2nd Super Bowl. The Chiefs no longer had Tyreek Hill, but in my opinion, the 22 and 23 Chiefs better than the 19 and 20 Chiefs. 49ers better. No hesitation. Better than the 19 team. The first score of the game came in the second quarter with Moody making a 55-yard field goal, and it was a record-setting field goal in a Super Bowl. Longest field goal in Super Bowl history. These aren't long field goals in Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes gets the ball back, and he connects with Harmon for 52 yards. First and goal for the Chiefs, and the 49ers force a fumble. Pacheco fumbles it. Defense is playing great. As good as you could hope for them to do. They are making the Chiefs fight for everything. They're getting pressure up front. Bosa's not getting sacks, but he's getting pressure. Chase Young even was having a good game. Eric Armstead was having a good game. They were tackling well. The secondary was playing strong, good on every level. 49ers defense. 49ers get the ball back, and it's the offensive play of the game for the 49ers. You could say it was the best play of the whole Super Bowl, was the trick play that Kyle dialed up. Jennings gets the ball, and he throws the touchdown pass, like sort of a screen to McCaffrey. It opens up, and he runs for the touchdown. It's 10-0. Controversial play because it looked like there was an illegal man downfield, but the play stands, no flag is thrown. The 49ers go up 10-0. But in all this, I'm not getting excited. Want to know why? Because I've learned not to get excited in big games with Kyle Shanahan. I wasn't going to get suckered into believing this was going to happen and they were actually going to win this game. I wasn't going to let my emotions overtake me. And I mean, unless they got a 17-point lead, they got a 20-point lead, you know the Chiefs are coming. You know Mahomes is coming. That's nice. Okay, 10-point lead. You need to keep scoring. The Chiefs go downfield, and the 49ers are able to hold them to 3 before half. So 10-3, and KC didn't score until 20 seconds left in the first half. What has to be said in the second quarter is Greenlaw suffered a non-contact torn Achilles tendon. Where? On the sideline. Yeah, on the sideline. And we could do a whole separate video. How about this? Top 5 49ers, not just injuries, playoff injuries. Montana. Oh, I have at least 5 I could give you. Montana in the 90 championship. Bowman in the 2013 championship. Greenlaw in this Super Bowl. Kittle in this year's 2025 playoffs. Oh, and of course, Brock Purdy in the 2022 championship game. And even you could say Ted Ginn not playing in the 2011 title game is another. But the third quarter is where this game was lost. It wasn't the fourth quarter. It was the third quarter. This is not brought up like it should be, but Patrick Mahomes overthrows his receiver and is intercepted by Brown. And the 49ers are in Chiefs territory, right? It's 10-3. The 49ers are in Chiefs territory in a 10-3 game, and they don't even score. They don't even get 3. And that is inexcusable, and that was it. And that's when I knew they were losing. That was when I knew they're not going to win this. Because they kept letting the Chiefs hang around. They would not put them away. They would not step on their throats. And for the second Super Bowl in a row, Patrick Mahomes was turning the football over. And they didn't take advantage of it like they should have. And he was having a bad Super Bowl to this point, just like he was in Super Bowl 54. But I've seen this before, right? I've seen this story before. Time and time again, you just couldn't get that touchdown. And here you couldn't even get the field goal. Late in the quarter, the Chiefs cut it to 10-6. Because all this hard work by the defense. 10-6. 10-6. And you could say what lost them the game, the actual turning point. I mean, I saw it earlier than most, in my opinion. But what actually resulted on the field was the Ray McCloud fumble on the punt. Because the Chiefs had nothing going on offense. They couldn't do anything against the 49ers. They managed 2 field goals. They had 6 points. And the momentum in the game was, and it appeared to be the 49ers. Though, again, I was a non-believer. I wasn't convinced until I would see more points on the scoreboard and they would actually put the Chiefs in some kind of hole. I wasn't going to accept it. And the 49ers, and the worst part about that, they just had a great stop on defense. They held the Chiefs again. And then all the momentum goes to the Chiefs, and it was just such a blow to the defense. The offense let them down. The special teams let them down. And you're handing the ball deep in your own territory to Patrick Mahomes, and immediately, touchdown, and you're behind. 13. And I have to also say, Butker earlier actually broke Moody's record for the longest field goal in Super Bowl history. It was a 57-yard field goal. So you actually had the 2 longest field goals in Super Bowl history in the same game by Butker 57 and Moody 55. But 13-10, and the 49ers respond. Give them some credit. This is one thing you always have to give Kyle credit for. His teams don't give up. His teams always play hard for him. I have never seen in any season, even with all the injuries, a Kyle Shanahan team ever give up on him. The 49ers respond with the touchdown, but Moody misses the extra point. It's blocked. And a lot of people blame Jake Moody for the Super Bowl loss. I don't. Because aside from that, he was very good in this Super Bowl. He got an extra point blocked, but he made up for it with some big field goals. But obviously, when you look at the final score and the fact this game went overtime, everyone points to that. Oh, if he just made that extra point. Let's be honest. Do you think Moody coming in this game was going to make a 57 and 53-yarder? And the one he was going to miss was an extra point? You know, I don't know about that. I mean, I think you have to be thankful for getting those 2 long field goals, which, again, should have been drives, at least one of them that ended in a touchdown. And then we wouldn't be talking about extra points and field goals in the Super Bowls. So the Chiefs tie it. It's a 16-16 game. With 1:53 left, the 49ers have the ball back, and they're trying to milk the clock. They're trying to take as much time as they can. And Jake Moody gets that 53-yard field goal. So that was with 1:53. The Chiefs get the ball back. It's 19-16. And ask any 49ers fan, What's your confidence level that Patrick Mahomes has 153 to work with and timeouts? It's not whether, the question is not whether, oh, are the Chiefs going to score or not? The question is, are you going to keep them out of the end zone? They're going to get at least 3. And Butker he's going to make that field goal. He is. Can you keep them out of the end zone? And, the problem with all this was, and going back to the Ray McCloud fumble, was you gave life to a sleeping giant. You don't do that to the all-time greats. And I'm amazed at how down people are with Patrick Mahomes over this last season and going back to Super Bowl 59. Do you realize what we just watched? We just watched one of the greatest stretches by any quarterback in NFL history. And I'm one of the first to say it's the quarterback era. You can't compare this to the 70s. It's a completely different sport with the way they protect quarterbacks and receivers. But still, take 2018 to 2024 and look at what Patrick Mahomes did. He's up there with the greats. I mean, he's just below Brady and Montana. That's how great he is. I mean, I put him ahead Peyton Manning. I put him ahead Aaron Rodgers, Marino, Elway, Favre. That's how great Mahomes was in a short period of time. But again, you're not stopping him completely. And he's rolling right now. That's the worst part of it. The Chiefs' offense, they're scoring. They don't look like they're going to get stopped. You may be able to stop them for 3, but to stop them all together, no. And the 49ers were just barely able to keep the Chiefs out of the end zone. The defense holds one more time, and you're going to overtime. And I asked the question again, what's your confidence level going over? I mean, it is not good. No. I mean, again, with all due respect to Brock Purdy, and Purdy had a good game. He played well enough to win. And I'm not looking at the all-22, but leave it to someone like Larry Krueger. He said the receivers of the 49ers were getting smothered. They were getting blanketed. They weren't getting separation. Say this about Brock Purdy. He didn't make the mistakes. He didn't turn the football over like Jimmy Garoppolo did. As good as he was, it was sort of an inefficient game, but he didn't make the mistakes. You got Mahomes on the other side of the field, and I'd rather go with Andy Reid, and I'd rather go with Spagnuolo Mahomes than what the 49ers have to offer. I like their chances a lot better in overtime than the 49ers. And there's some ownership, too, with the Chiefs over the 49ers. And this is where Kyle gets a lot of heat because the 49ers win the toss and they take the ball first. And this is when the overtime rules were new. And everyone knows now that you take the ball second. Kyle made the wrong decision. Niners drive all the way down to the 8, and they can't get in. I mean, if that doesn't tell the story, that one moment there really defines Kyle Shanahan as the head coach of the 49ers. Settling for field goals, not getting enough points, not getting touchdowns, and he's supposed to be an offensive genius, yet he can't get his team in the end zone. He can't ultimately score enough points in the big games. He can't. With the Garoppolo or with Purdy. He decides to kick the field goal. Again, you're not feeling great in overtime. You're like, okay, if you get the touchdown, all right, things are different if you get the touchdown. But when he decides to kick the field goal, whether he makes it or not, Moody, and he did, it was over. Everyone knew it was over. Mahomes is going to go down the field and he's going to get a touchdown. And you just settled for 3. You didn't even try to get a touchdown. way too conservative. Way too conservative when everything was on the line. You don't have Jimmy Garoppolo out there. You have Purdy. He can run. He's accurate. He's smart. And man, one of my chief complaints about this game, George Kittle got one reception, and then afterwards people were saying, oh, he was banged up and he's playing hurt. He looked okay out there to me for every time I saw him running. The Chiefs had better linebackers in Super Bowl 54 or 58 than 54, like Nick Bolton and company. But you couldn't have designed some more plays for an all-time great like George Kittle. You couldn't get the ball in his hands. One reception, and you need help in the red zone. You're within the 10-yard line, and you can't get in. Give me some George Kittle. And I'll get to McCaffrey, too, that he had, the big play was really the run, the pass he caught from Jennings, and then he had there was a good play that set up what you thought was going to be potentially a touchdown. It was one of his bigger plays of the game by McCaffrey, but for the most part, the Chiefs limited him. They made him earn his yards. They tackled well, and you can't deny the fumble was big in the first quarter. Again, all points were at a premium, and it's 3. Another 3 would have gone even a long way in this one. Debo didn't do much at all. The Chiefs get the ball back. And I'm not going to get on the defense in this one. I'm going to return to talk about the defense. You kept Mahomes, unlike the first Super Bowls. Well, the defense played in the first Super Bowl. They played even better this time. Yeah, it wasn't the same speed and the same threats they had on offense and the big plays that you had with Tyreek Hill. Steve Wilks' defense surrendered 19 points through 4 quarters to Patrick Mahomes. 19 points. That should be good enough. It should have been good enough. So who's to blame for this loss? I'll get back to that. Who's to blame for this loss? So we know how the story ends. Casey gets the ball back. And we know their offense is feeling good. They're in a rhythm, even if they're, in their case, settling for some field goals too. They're going down the field, and at the very minimum, they're going to get 3, but they're probably going to get a touchdown and win this. And there's the big 4th down on their own 34-yard line. Mahomes fakes the handoff. He runs it himself. Bosa bites. And Bosa's blamed for this play a lot. Most defenders probably were going to bite on that play. And Bosa had a great game. He didn't register a sack. He was on Mahomes constantly. He played great in both Super Bowls. He wasn't the problem. He wasn't why the 49ers lost. I am not going to point the finger at Nick Bosa. Actually, I'm not really pointing the finger at very many players at all in this game. You can point the finger at McCaffrey. I hate to do it, for the fumble. You could blame Moody for a missed extra point. Okay, it was blocked. Certainly a lot goes on Ray McCloud. I mean, what were you doing on that punt? Just get away from the ball. Just get away from the ball. And the chief of the blame is on Kyle Shanahan. It is laid at the feet of Kyle Shanahan. And the Chiefs move down the field after converting that big 4th down, slowly, carefully moving down, and set up with a 1st and goal from the 3. And with 3 seconds remaining in overtime, Mahomes passes to Hardman to win the Super Bowl. With 3 seconds left in overtime. Rips the hearts out of the 49ers, stomps on them for a second time. And this was worse. Oh, it was so much worse. This made Super Bowl 54 only look kind of bad. It just stung some. Super Bowl 58. I mean, on one hand, I sat there and said, I never believed the 49ers were really going to win this unless they were really going to put up some points. I mean, even when this was going on, you're just sort of numb to it already. But still, all the opportunities. Again, I could say in one sense I was numb. On the other hand, worst loss ever. Didn't make it any less terrible. Didn't make it any less painful. Because the window really closed with this loss. The 49ers would be injured 2024, 2025. The 49ers would be injured in 2024. Tons of injuries in 2025. They make the playoffs. But this was a healthy team, with the exception of Greenlaw. This was a loaded and stacked, healthy team. And I would take it over the 2012 49ers team that lost to the Ravens. I would take it over the 2019 team that lost to the Chiefs the first time. This was the best 49ers team that lost a Super Bowl. And again, they were the better all-around team than the Chiefs. This Chiefs was a better all-around, well-rounded version of the Chiefs than what we saw previously in 19. But the 49ers, on paper at least, were a better team, and they should have won. And that's not being a homer. They should have won. We laid it all out here. The 49ers failing so many opportunities to get more points, turning the football over. You really can't afford more than one turnover, and they had more than one turnover against Mahomes and the Chiefs, and one is the limit. The coaching, the special teams, especially the offensive coaching. I mean, Kyle Shanahan gets all angry at Steve Wilks. Steve Wilks didn't lose you the Super Bowl, Kyle. You are most to blame for losing the Super Bowl. You couldn't score more than 22 points against Kansas City. What's the excuse? You had a better quarterback. You had Kittle. You had Ayuk. You had Debo. You had your favorite player of all time, Christian McCaffrey, Offensive Player of the Year. And you're not able to manage more points? I mean, I'll even say Trent Williams didn't have a great game for his high and lofty standard. McCaffrey did not have a good game. I mean, George Kittle, one reception. And think about this. In the two Super Bowls against the Chiefs, Super Bowl 54, and we're evaluating Kyle, 20 points. Super Bowl 58, 22 points. Going to both those Super Bowls, if you told me that's what they were going to score, I would say that wasn't enough. That wouldn't be enough. Again, offensive mastermind, genius that he's called. I won't call him that. Very good offensive coach, not a genius. If he was, he would have gotten more points on the scoreboard than 21 and 22 in these two different Super Bowls. And he didn't learn from his mistakes either. Yeah, this was a good Chiefs defense, but you have got to come away with touchdowns. You have to do the little things right. You can't shoot yourself in the foot. You can't try to overcome all your own self-inflicted wounds and try to beat the Chiefs at the same time. You can't do it. What made it even worse, though, the next season actually made this even worse because the Eagles got another crack at the Chiefs. They lost to the Chiefs in 2022 in a heartbreaking fashion. I mean, the Eagles fans and players, they had reason to be upset about the way that one finished. They got another crack at the Chiefs 2 years later. They had the Offensive Player of the Year in Saquon Barkley. Did they lose to the Chiefs again? No. They destroyed the Chiefs. And we'll see what comes in the next season or two. But it looked like that loss and losing in that humiliating fashion, and the final score was not indicative of how dominant that win was. I mean, that was one of the most impressive wins in Super Bowl history by anybody, what the Eagles pulled off against the Chiefs. The Chiefs got garbage time points, and it made the final score look a lot better than it really was. And I sat there as a sports fan of my team. I was so jealous of the Eagles. How could you not be? I'm sitting there saying, that's what we should have done. Why didn't we do that? We had a great defensive performance, and our great offensive coach couldn't get us the points to win. Right? Right? Sirianni was able to do it. Fangio was able to do it. And it kind of burned me, too, that Fangio did not have a great Super Bowl coaching in Super Bowl 47. Oh, he had just about the perfect game plan for Patrick Mahomes, and his defense was ready. The Eagles got their revenge, one of the great revenge games of all time. The 49ers instead lose again for a second time, and you never want to be in the position of the Bengals. The Bengals lost to the 49ers twice in the 80s, and it's awful losing to the same team twice. It is. The Bills lost 2 years in a row in 92 and 93 to the Cowboys. That's about as bad as it gets. And then the Giants, again, somehow, some way, they beat the Patriots twice. Eli Manning gets the better Tom Brady twice. Again, I think Eli's one of the most overrated players of all time, but I can't take that away from him. And then finally, what you know what they feel like. You know what those teams feel like, and the shoe is on the other foot. And what's supposed to make you feel better? Oh, well, at least you didn't have the 28-3 comeback like the Patriots had. I would have rather lost. Let me put it like this. I would have rather lost in that historic fashion, like the Falcons did to the Patriots, than to lose those 3 Super Bowls in the ways the 49ers did. I mean, who's had it worse over this 30-year period of time? Nobody's had it worse in this 30-year stretch. What's worse historically? The Bills. No one has anything on the Bills. The 90, 91, 92, 93 Bills. The 49ers, over my lifetime as a fan, there have been a lot of good times. There have been a lot of great games, great teams. We've been so close, yet we haven't been able to do it. And I don't have confidence that Kyle Shanahan's going to do it. There's no reason to have confidence. But until we're proven otherwise, Kyle Shanahan is going to get you to the playoffs. He's going to have great regular seasons. He's going to win a lot of playoff games. And there's something to say for that. There really is. But he has given us no reason to believe that he can win a Super Bowl. And you could point to say, well, he lost to one of the all-time greats by such a narrow margin in Super Bowl 58. And it had to be a great comeback in Super 54. It was Patrick Mahomes. Well, go back to the 21 conference championship game against the Rams. Matthew Stafford's a very good quarterback. He's not one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. He's not. He can be beat. The Seahawks beat him this season. Though he played well in the championship game. They managed to beat him. It's been some 30 years.